Grace stood in the empty ballroom and pretended it was a stage. Monaco, February 1971. The palace staff had gone home for the evening and Grace had the enormous space to herself. She'd told Rainier she needed to review the setup for next week's charity gala, but that was a lie. She needed something else entirely. Something she hadn't allowed herself in 15 years. She needed to act. Not perform as Princess Grace, smiling and waving and saying the appropriate things. Actually act. Inhabit a character. Become someone else. She'd smuggled the script up to her rooms 3 days ago, hidden it under her mattress like contraband, read it late at night when Rainier was asleep in his separate bedroom. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf by Edward Albee. Martha, the bitter aging wife tearing apart her marriage with alcohol and rage and devastating honesty. It was everything Grace wasn't allowed to be. Messy, angry, real. She'd memorized Martha's monologues, the words searing themselves into her brain with an intensity she hadn't felt since her Hollywood days. Now, standing alone in the ballroom with its gilded mirrors and crystal chandeliers, she was going to perform them. Not for an audience. Not for critics or directors or cameras. Just for herself. Just to prove that Grace Kelly still existed somewhere underneath Princess Grace. She took a breath and began. What a dump. Hey, what's that from? Her voice echoed in the empty room. Too quiet, too controlled. Martha wasn't controlled. Martha was chaos. Grace tried again, louder this time, letting some of her own bitterness creep in. What a dump. Better. She could feel it now, that old muscle memory of transformation, of stepping outside herself and into someone else. She paced the ballroom, channeling Martha's restless energy, her need to provoke and destroy and feel something, anything. Grace knew that need intimately. She'd spent 15 years being appropriate and composed and dead inside. Now, alone in this cavernous room, she could finally let it out. I swear, if you existed I'd divorce you. The line hit her differently than it had on the page. She was 41 years old, married to a man she barely spoke to, living in a palace that felt like a mausoleum. Would she divorce Rainier if she could? If Monaco wouldn't implode, if her children wouldn't be humiliated, if the scandal wouldn't destroy everything she'd built? Yes. God, yes. But she couldn't. So instead she performed Martha's rage in an empty ballroom and pretended it was enough. The monologue built, Martha's pain and fury escalating, and Grace went with it. She'd forgotten this feeling, the way a good role could crack you open, the way becoming someone else paradoxically made you more yourself. Martha's wounds were Grace's wounds. The disappointment. The loneliness. The slow realization that you'd traded your life for something that looked impressive from the outside but was hollow at the core. Grace's voice grew louder, echoing off the marble floors and ornate walls. She wasn't Princess Grace anymore. She was Martha. She was angry. She was alive. I'm loud and I'm vulgar and I wear the pants in this house because somebody's got to. She was screaming now, years of suppressed emotion pouring out in Martha's words, and it felt incredible. She didn't hear the door open. Didn't realize she had an audience until she reached the end of the monologue and heard applause. Grace spun around, her heart hammering. Caroline stood in the doorway, 19 years old and beautiful, watching her mother with an expression Grace couldn't read. Don't stop, Caroline said, walking into the ballroom. That was extraordinary. I've never seen you like that. Grace's face flushed. She felt exposed, caught in the act of being someone other than the perfect princess. I was just rehearsing for the gala. There's a theatrical element and I wanted to. She was making excuses, falling back into performance. Caroline cut her off. Mother, don't lie to me. That wasn't for a gala. That was Virginia Woolf. I saw it in London last year. Grace stood frozen, the script burning like evidence in her pocket. Caroline crossed the ballroom and stood in front of her mother, really looking at her for maybe the first time in years. You were an actress. A real one. Before all this. She gestured at the palace around them, the gilded cage. I forget that sometimes. We all do. But just now, watching you, I remembered. You were brilliant. Grace felt tears prick her eyes. When was the last time someone had called her brilliant? When was the last time anyone had seen her as anything other than a decorative princess? I was an actress a long time ago, Grace said quietly. That person doesn't exist anymore. Caroline shook her head. She exists. I just saw her. She's still in there, Mother. You're just not letting her out. They stood in the empty ballroom, mother and daughter, both trapped in the same system that demanded women be ornamental rather than substantial. Caroline had been rebelling lately, dating inappropriate men, skipping royal functions, making it clear she had no intention of being a dutiful princess. Grace had lectured her about responsibility and image, all while knowing Caroline was doing what Grace should have done years ago. Refusing to disappear. Do another scene, Caroline said suddenly. Please. I want to see it. Grace hesitated. It felt dangerous, performing for her daughter, revealing this hidden part of herself. But also liberating. Someone actually wanted to see Grace Kelly instead of Princess Grace. I don't know if I should, Grace said, but she was already pulling out the script, already feeling Martha rising in her again. Do it, Caroline urged. When will you get another chance? It was a good question. When would Grace get another chance to act? To be seen? To let out even a fraction of what she kept locked inside? Never, probably. This was it. This stolen hour in an empty ballroom with her daughter as the only witness. Grace opened the script to another of Martha's monologues, this one about disappointed dreams and aging and the gap between who you thought you'd be and who you became. It could have been written about Grace's life. She took a breath and began, and this time she didn't hold back. She let Martha's pain become her pain. Let 15 years of suppressed rage and disappointment pour out. Let herself be messy and vulnerable and real. Caroline watched, transfixed. Grace performed the entire scene, building to Martha's devastating admission that her whole life has been a performance, that she's been playing a role for so long she's forgotten how to be real. When Grace finished, she was breathing hard, tears streaming down her face. The ballroom was silent except for the sound of her ragged breathing. Then Caroline started clapping, slow and genuine. That was the most honest thing I've ever seen you do, she said quietly. In my entire life, I've never seen you be that real. Grace wiped her face, suddenly embarrassed. I shouldn't have let you see that. It's not appropriate. Princesses don't. Fuck what princesses do, Caroline said bluntly. You're a person. You're my mother. And you're clearly dying inside this role you've been playing. Grace wanted to deny it but couldn't. Caroline was right. She'd been dying for years, so slowly she'd barely noticed. Each state dinner, each ribbon cutting, each perfectly composed smile had taken a piece of her until there was almost nothing left. I made a choice, Grace said, the old excuse. I chose this life and I have to live with it. Caroline walked closer, her young face fierce. You were 26 when you married father. You didn't know what you were choosing. You thought you were escaping Hollywood, but you just traded one performance for another. A longer one. A more permanent one. Grace stared at her daughter. When had Caroline gotten so perceptive? When had she started seeing through all Grace's carefully maintained facades? What would you have me do? Grace asked. I can't exactly quit being a princess. There's no graceful exit from this particular role. Caroline considered this. Maybe not. But you could stop pretending you're happy. You could stop performing contentment and start admitting you're miserable. At least to yourself. At least to us. Grace sat down on one of the ballroom chairs, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline of performing had worn off and now she just felt hollow. What good would that do? Acknowledging I'm unhappy doesn't change anything. Caroline sat beside her. It changes everything. Right now you're lying to yourself, which means you're lying to all of us. We tiptoe around you, trying to preserve this illusion that you're the perfect princess living a fairy tale. But we all know it's bullshit. Father knows. Albert and Stephanie know. I certainly know. We're all performing this elaborate charade where we pretend everything's fine. And it's exhausting. Grace looked at her daughter, really looked at her. Caroline had her own pain, her own struggles with the impossible expectations of being a princess. But she was fighting back in ways Grace never had. Making scandals. refusing to comply, living messily and publicly and without apology. Grace had spent 15 years being perfect and it had nearly killed her. Caroline was choosing imperfection and at least she was alive. "I'm proud of you," Grace said suddenly. Caroline looked surprised. "For what?" "For not being me. For refusing to disappear into this role. For staying yourself even when it would be easier to just comply." Caroline's eyes filled with tears. "I'm not as brave as you think. I'm terrified most of the time. Terrified I'll end up like you, trapped in a life I hate, performing happiness while dying inside." They sat in silence for a moment, two women separated by a generation but joined by the same trap. Finally Grace stood and walked back to the center of the ballroom. "One more scene," she said, opening the script. "Then we should go before someone finds us." Caroline smiled. "Which scene?" Grace found the page she wanted. Martha's final monologue, where she admits that her entire marriage, her entire life, has been built on lies and illusions. That she's been performing for so long she doesn't know what's real anymore. It was the most devastating scene in the play and the most honest. Grace had been avoiding it, afraid of what it would reveal. But now, with Caroline watching, she needed to perform it. Needed to speak these truths even if she could only do it through someone else's words. She began. The monologue started quiet, Martha almost defeated, admitting her failures and disappointments. Then it built, anger replacing resignation, fury at what she'd lost, what she'd given up, what she'd become. Grace let it all pour out. Every sacrifice, every compromise, every moment she'd swallowed her own desires to be what others needed her to be. Her voice filled the ballroom, bouncing off the walls, and for those few minutes Grace wasn't a princess or even an actress. She was just a woman finally telling the truth. When she reached the final lines, her voice broke. Martha's admission that she's afraid of being alone, afraid of being nothing without the performance. Grace understood that fear intimately. Who was she without Princess Grace? Without the role she'd been playing for 15 years? The answer terrified her. She finished the monologue and stood in the empty ballroom, breathing hard, makeup ruined by tears, hair disheveled. She looked nothing like Princess Grace. She looked like Grace Kelly after a brutal performance, wrung out and raw and completely real. Caroline stood and crossed to her mother, pulling her into a tight embrace. They held each other in the middle of the ballroom, both crying now, both acknowledging something that couldn't be spoken aloud outside this room. That Grace was trapped. That the fairy tale was a nightmare. That Princess Grace was killing Grace Kelly and there was nothing anyone could do about it. "Thank you," Caroline whispered, "for letting me see you. The real you." Grace held her daughter tighter. "Thank you for asking to see her. No one has wanted to see Grace Kelly in a very long time." They pulled apart eventually. Grace wiped her face and tried to restore some semblance of composure. Tomorrow she'd have to be Princess Grace again. Tomorrow there would be obligations and expectations and the endless performance of perfection. But tonight she'd been Martha. She'd been Grace Kelly. She'd been real. Caroline picked up the script from where Grace had dropped it. "Can I keep this?" Grace nodded. "Just hide it well. If your father finds it he'll think I'm having a breakdown." Caroline smiled sadly. "Are you having a breakdown?" Grace considered the question. Was she? Or was this the opposite of a breakdown? A breakthrough maybe. A crack in the facade that let some truth seep in. "I don't know," she said honestly. "But whatever this is, I needed it. I needed to remember what it felt like to act. To be someone else. To let the performance be intentional instead of constant." They left the ballroom together, Grace pocketing the script, Caroline linking her arm through her mother's. In the corridor outside, they became princess and princess again, their postures straightening, their faces smoothing into appropriate expressions. The transformation was automatic, years of training making it effortless. But now Grace was conscious of it. She could feel herself putting on Princess Grace like a costume, could sense Grace Kelly retreating back into hiding. The awareness was both painful and strangely liberating. At least she knew now. At least she could see the performance for what it was. That had to count for something. Caroline stopped at the stairs that led to her rooms but didn't climb them. Instead, she turned back to her mother, her face serious in the dim corridor light. "Can I ask you something? And will you promise to answer honestly?" Grace hesitated. Honesty was dangerous. Honesty led to cracks in the facade, and cracks led to collapse. But after what they'd just shared in the ballroom, lying felt impossible. "I'll try," she said. Caroline took a breath. "Do you love Father? Did you ever love him? Or was the whole thing just another performance?" The question hung between them like something physical. Grace could deflect, could give the diplomatic answer about respect and partnership and building a life together. But Caroline's eyes were fierce and hopeful and desperate for truth. She deserved better than another performance. "I thought I did," Grace said slowly. "When I married him, I thought what I felt was love. But looking back, I think it was relief. Relief at escaping Hollywood. Relief at finally doing something my father approved of. Relief at finding a role that seemed easier than being Grace Kelly." She paused, gathering courage. "But love. Real love. The kind that sustains you through decades of marriage. No, I don't think I ever really loved him. And he certainly never loved me. He loved the idea of me." Caroline wiped the tears from her eyes and looked at her mother with a mixture of sadness and anger. "The movie star princess. The trophy. That's what he wanted," she said quietly. "But Grace Kelly, the real woman, he never wanted to know her." Grace looked at her daughter, the words sinking deeper than she expected. For a moment she said nothing. Then she reached out and gently touched Caroline's cheek. "What's sad," Grace said softly, "is that I accepted it. I convinced myself that it was enough. Companionship. Children. Security. I told myself love was a luxury." Caroline shook her head. "That's not enough," she said. "You deserve more than that." Grace smiled sadly. "Martha knows that. Virginia Woolf knows that. You can't build a life on performances and expect to survive intact." Caroline grabbed her mother's hand suddenly. "Then leave," she said. "You're only 41. You could have another life. You could act again. Be yourself again." Grace held her daughter's hand but slowly shook her head. "And do what?" she asked gently. "Abandon my children. Humiliate Monaco. Destroy everything I've built here. Caroline, I'm trapped. Not by locked doors. By consequences. By choices I made 15 years ago." Caroline's voice grew stronger. "Then make new choices. Stop pretending you're happy. Stop performing for everyone." Grace pulled her daughter into an embrace. "You sound like Martha," she whispered. "Angry. Demanding. Refusing to settle." Caroline laughed through her tears. "Good," she said. "Someone in this family should be." They stood together in the quiet corridor, and for a moment Grace felt something shift inside her. Not an escape. Not a solution. But recognition. Caroline saw her. Not Princess Grace. Grace Kelly. Trapped, exhausted, but still there. "Will you do it again?" Caroline asked. "Rehearse in the ballroom?" Grace hesitated. "Maybe," she said quietly. "If I can." Because the truth was painful. Performing Martha had awakened something she had buried for 15 years. The actress. The artist. The woman who needed to create and transform. Caroline kissed her mother's cheek and walked upstairs, the script tucked under her arm like contraband. Grace remained alone in the hallway. Tomorrow the performance would return. Breakfast meetings. Charity events. Diplomatic lunches. Endless obligations that required her to be perfect. Princess Grace again. But tonight she had been something else. She had stood in an empty ballroom and performed Martha. She had spoken truth. She had been seen. Slowly she climbed the stairs to her room, her body heavy from the emotional weight of the evening. Passing a mirror, she stopped. Her hair was disheveled. Her makeup smudged with tears. She looked terrible. She looked human. For a moment she stared at the woman in the mirror. Not Princess Grace. Just Grace. Grace entered her bedroom and locked the door. She opened her nightstand drawer and placed the Virginia Woolf script beside the Tennessee Williams plays she had discovered months earlier. A hidden library, proof that Grace Kelly had once existed. She ran her fingers across the worn covers. These plays were her rebellion, her secret life. She changed into her nightgown and sat at her vanity, removing the last traces of makeup. The woman staring back at her looked older now. Lines around her eyes. Gray in her hair. In Hollywood she might have stopped getting leading roles. But here in Monaco, she was expected to remain frozen forever. The perfect princess. Grace washed her face and climbed into bed, but sleep would not come. Her mind replayed the evening again and again. The lines from Martha. Caroline's fierce honesty. And the feeling of performing again. It had awakened something inside her that she could not easily silence. So Grace rose from the bed and went to her desk. She took out paper and began writing. Not a letter. Just the truth. Tonight I was Martha, she wrote. Tomorrow I will be Princess Grace again. But for a few hours in that ballroom, I was alive. She wrote about Rainier. About the marriage that had always been a transaction. About the career she had abandoned. About the actress she used to be. When she finished, she read the pages slowly. Then fear crept in. If anyone ever saw these words, it would destroy everything. Grace carried the pages to the fireplace and watched them burn, the truth disappearing into ash. But the scripts remained, hidden in the drawer beside her bed. Tomorrow she would return to the performance. But now she had something else. A secret reminder. That somewhere beneath Princess Grace, Grace Kelly was still there. Waiting.